In this tutorial, we will cover how to create analytical apps. Analytical apps are a powerful tool for data scientists to make their analysis and workflows usable and understandable to a larger, less technical audience. By creating an analytical app, you are providing others with a simpler UI and additionally protecting your work from accidental misuse. In this video, we will cover some of the basics of analytical apps based on workflows and parameters. To start with, we will start with our workflow. In this case, we have a simple workflow that simply filters our data twice. First, based on the refractive index, and next, based on the class. Additionally, within our filters, we have implemented parameters. If you want to learn more about parameters, check out our other videos. In this case, we have two parameters, the refractive index and the class type. When we go to execute this workflow, it can be difficult for first-time or less technical users to understand how to change these parameters. The goal of our analytical app will be to provide a simpler UI so that they can make these changes effectively and without messing with our workflows. To do this, we move over to the Applications tab. Now we can create our analytical app using the Create button in the top right-hand side of the screen. First, we must name our app. Next, we can add a category and a description if we have more than one app or many apps on the same machine. Next, we select our execution type. This will be what our actual app is based on, either a workflow or a various notebook. For this case, we will use the workflow which we showed earlier. Now we can select our workflow. When we hit save, we have now loaded the workflow into the analytical app. And now we are ready to create stages. Stages are the actual UI that the user will see. To add a stage, we simply click the green plus sign on the right-hand side of the screen. Now we can select our stage type. If we want to upload files or allow the user to upload files, we select upload. If we want our user to be able to access the parameters in our workflow, we can select parameters. And if we want to simply run a workflow, we simply select run. In this case, we want our user to be able to select their parameters. Next, we need to add a name to our stage. We can also add a condition here. A condition will set whether the user is shown a stage or not. Sometimes, based on the input from previous stages, the next stage may or may not be needed. Now that we've added our stage, we can now edit our stage using the orange pencil sign. This is the stage screen. This is where we will actually build our UI. We can drag and drop different components from the left-hand side and then edit them here and save them or remove them from our analytical app. Since we have two different parameters we want the user to select from, first we will add a columns from the layout section. The layout section just simply provides different formats for us to add our other apps onto. Now from general, we will add a text field. Now we can go through the options for adding our text field and modifying it to make it easier for the user to understand. The placeholder here is not actually a value shown, but is simply grayed out text that shows in place of the user's input. Next, we can go to our data step. In this case, we can also add a default value. This will show instead of the grayed out text. Additionally, if we want to add information to our field, we can also add them here or in the tooltip. so that if a user does not know exactly what they need to enter, they can read the description here and figure it out. This is also a good way to provide some safeguards against user error. We can also add different forms of entry. For example, the class field has very limited values, so we can add a radio here. This will give the user only a select number of options which we have preset and does not allow them to stray outside of what we have created. Here we need to use the Data tab to add the actual values which we want to be allowed to be selected. Next, we need to also go to the API tab. This is where we actually connect our parameters from our workflows to the Analytical App options. If necessary, we may also need to go back to the workflow to correctly select our parameter name. This must be the exact name that you gave your parameter in the workflow. Now we can hit save, and then we can hit done in the top right hand side of the screen if we are done with this stage. To add more functionality, we will also add a button here. This will be to actually execute the workflow. As you can see, there are many different options for each different stage. In this case, we will add an event, and we will have this event be to execute the workflow. Sometimes it may be necessary, if you have multiple stages, to add a button, such as a next button, to move to the next stage. It is important that your stages are always connected and that your user always has options to go to, and the stage does not end in a dead end. Buttons are a good way of ensuring that your user does not hit a dead end. Now that we have saved this stage, we can hit done, and it will be edited in our stages here. Now we hit save, and now we can actually run our analytical app to see how it works. Here we will enter the maximum value, 1.52, and we want to filter for only glass from class 2. Now we can hit execute. This will send the job and will start the execution of the workflow. The user does not need to move back to the workflow stage or any other stage to see the output of the workflow. This is in essence very similar to the bottom portion of the execution page. As we can see from our summary statistics that we added in our workflow, the maximum value does not exceed 1.52, and all glass has been filtered and only is of class 2. This is how a basic analytical app works. Now we will look at a more advanced example that has already been built before. In this example here, we have multiple stages, and in addition to that, we have a lot more information, and it has been correctly formatted like a PowerPoint. This can make it easier for users to read a large amount of information. Now when we hit next, we move to the next stage. The user cannot see all the stages because some of the stages have conditions that need to be set before we actually move on to them. In this case, we need to select our operation mode. We can either select computation or prediction. If we set for a prediction here and hit next, it will show us the correct stage for the prediction analytical app. In this case, we have workflow data or DBFS. When we select the DBFS stage, you can see that additional options are automatically shown. And if we move back to the workflow data, those options are removed. You can see this app also has a next button and a back button. again, to help the user and to stop them from reaching unintended endpoints. As you can see, we can also execute workflows within an analytical app. In this case, this analytical app is connected to multiple workflows. Each stage, we can hit run to run the selected workflow, and then we can hit next to go to the next workflow. In this way, similar to a pipeline, we can ensure that users only run the workflows in the intended order. As you can see, we can add a near unlimited number of stages to our analytical apps. This was a showcase of a more advanced analytical app. In future videos, we will go over how to create these also. Thank you for listening.